Hey guys, welcome again to Technology Drop-In Thursday. Today is March 17th, 2022, and we have not a lot going on, but we have some really cool stuff going on. So I'm just going to make sure, am I sharing my screen? I am. There we are. Okay, so let me just bring this up bigger. Come on, there we are. So what we're going to look at our agenda today is I want to start off with some Google stuff here. So how to embed Google Forms chart into doc slides and drawings. So this is something that's bugged me for years, is when you have a Google form, you can go and if it's fairly straightforward and Q&A, multiple choice, you get these wonderful charts. And I can see them as an editor of this form. However, you can't share this form data out with anyone without giving everyone edit access to your form. And quite frankly, for a lot of things that I do, I'm not giving my access out to anyone. So you really can go in, you can, if you have to, you can go in and create a PDF of it. But as things change then here, this stuff obviously goes out of date. Well, Google released a recent functionality where you'll notice for each chart, there's a copy link here. And if I copy that, I can paste it into a Google Doc, Google Slides, or I can't remember what the other one was. But I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in here. And this is going to create a live link to that chart data. Now, the nice thing about this is I do not have to share the form with you. That data just comes from the form straight into here. And as long as you've got view access here, you're going to see this. And as more items get added, this graph here will actually change, just as it changes in here as more requests or more submissions get happening in there. So this becomes a live report for whatever you're doing in your form, which means it's a lot easier to share people without giving them access to all the stuff in here. And sometimes you might have, like typically with a bunch of surveys, I might have this information, but then I might have a couple of optional personal questions. When you share that form and you share this page here, you're sharing all the information. And I don't necessarily want to share every single question. So I can build my own kind of report here using the charts that I'm interested in, removing the ones I'm not interested in so that this is a useful chart, but I don't share all the private information or the questions I don't want visible. So that's a great function. I'm finally happy they've done something like that. Okay, fun time and techie stuff happening now. Calendly. If no one's used Calendly before, Calendly is an application that allows you to basically create a booking page. So for example, here is a page that I've created. I have this link up here that I put in my subject line, or sorry, my email. Hang on, it's coming. Email. Oh, signature. There it is. That hurt. Signature line. Or I could just apply this link to anywhere. The nice thing about this is that now somebody can go in and pick a day, look at all the times that I have available, because it's not going to include any of the times that I'm busy or whatever, but it's checking my Outlook calendar, goes through in here. I can pick a time. The user can fill out their information. And which is really neat is they can choose how they want to meet, whether it's in person, whether it's by a phone call or a Microsoft Teams. And if it's Microsoft Teams, it automatically adds that link in there to your meeting event. If it's a phone call, the user has a choice, or when I set it up, I can say I want them to supply a phone call or a phone number, or I'll supply the phone number. And you can set that all up. Once this is done and you schedule it, it goes into your calendar, it goes into the other person's calendar. So I've created a tutorial on how to use Calendly. It's in the Help Center, but it's also a link here in the show notes that we have here. Keep in mind, this is something that you would use externally for external people. Because if I'm internal, I'm doing a busy search and I'm going to book it that way using the appointment scheduler within Outlook. So this is not intended for internal audiences. It's intended more for external audiences. The exception to that is faculty. Faculty could actually use this to create office hours. And I'm just going to go over here and I'll come back to the dashboard here in a second, but let's go and take a quick look here. In here, when I look at my availability, so when this thing is going to run, I can pick different times. So maybe I'm only going to have my office hours on Monday from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and then from 1:30 to 2:30. So I could specifically set this all up to do just my office hours whenever I want. You can see here I've got teaching office hours, and the times are staggered a little bit differently than my regular hours. Now, the thing to keep in mind about this is typically a paid service, but they do have a free tier. With a free tier, you are limited to only one meeting type. So even though I've got afternoon hours meeting with Trevor and 30-minute meeting, I'm only with a free piece, I'm only able to have one of those running at a time. But typically, if you just focus on, hey, this is going to be for my office hours for students, or this is for my external people, you don't have to worry about it. If you are looking to do something for your team, then we have Microsoft Bookings, and Microsoft Bookings allows us to say, okay, I want to book one of these 5 people at this time. Let me see everyone's schedule and stuff like that. Microsoft already does that. You don't have to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. So this is something, if you do a lot with external people or students, then I would recommend taking a look at this. It does take the appointments and throw them directly into Outlook, which is the nice thing. In the past, faculty like Dave has been using appointment slots, which is a Google tool, which works really well. But the problem is those appointments get placed into Google Calendar, not your Outlook calendar. So this is kind of a nicer way to make sure everything's in Outlook and you have everything in one location. So that's Calendly. You'll find that in the Help Center. Just search for Calendly, and there's instructions there. There is a Help Center here. So, I mean, if you have questions, you can go through it. I did attach a video into the document. So I recommend you take a look at the video, because it goes through how to do the setup and some of the gotchas and stuff. Because you'll notice I've got 3 of these things showing up. I can have as many as I want. But once my 2-week trial's over, which is in the next day or so, I can only use one at a time. So that's Calendly. Oh, there's a question or a comment. I'm just going to take a quick look. Do you have a preference for Calendly or You Can Book Me? You know, I was a big You Can Book Me fan, and for a number of years. One of the things I do like about Calendly is the ability that when someone goes to book an appointment, they can choose the Microsoft Teams link. Okay. You can also, I think you can throw Zoom in there. Whether you can have both at the same time may depend on whether you're on the trial or not. I can't remember. But I like the fact that the Teams link there is linked to my Outlook calendar. So it's an Outlook team from McEwen link, as well as it goes into my calendar. You Can Book Me does have some other advantages. You can use multiple calendars, but I think that's a paid for service now as opposed to free. So for example, I have my McEwen calendar, but I also have my personal calendar, and I can actually have them all set up together so that when you're booking an appointment, it's going to go, well, Trevor is free as far as Outlook goes, but on his personal calendar, he's got a dental appointment. So I'm not going to book that spot. On the free accounts, you only get one calendar, and I think You Can Book Me is the same way. So to answer the question, I personally have switched from You Can Book Me because I used to use that up to about a week ago. I've actually switched over to this because I do like the layout better and stuff like that. But that's just my personal thing. So everyone's got their own. Any other questions on Calendly before I move on to the next topic? And not everyone's going to need to use it. Quite frankly, if you're not dealing with external people a lot, then don't worry about it. Okay, here's another one. Copying contacts from Microsoft to Google. So this is for the geekies out there. So we've all run into this problem where I've got this document. I want to share it with someone. So I'm going to share this with Jazz. And I go type in Jazz. Jazz's name doesn't show up. Google is a little bit different than the way we've got things set up with Outlook. In Outlook, I can start typing in a person's name, and there's a directory that we have all our people are in there, and it shows up, and we can just pick the person's name. In Google, they don't have that turned on because the students' information would show up, and our information would show up in the students. So they've decided, no, we're not going to do that. So how do these names get in here? Well, these names are actually pulled from Google Contacts. So there's my Google Contacts. If I add the name here, then that information is going to show up on part of someone I can share with. But every time I add a name to Outlook, I would have to manually go in and update it here in Google Land. So first thing you can do is you can go into your contacts list here and export all your Microsoft contacts. So all your contacts in Microsoft, export those and then import them into Google. So you kind of take your snapshot of time, grab all these names, export them, and there's a link in the show notes there. I will be doing an article later and have all the links and stuff. But you can export all those contacts, import them into Google, and you're fine. You now have exactly the same thing. But as you add new people into here, they're not going to automatically show up in here. So Zapier is a third-party tool, very similar to, give me a second, Power Automate, where it does connections with different applications, and it can, do this feature here, do this feature here, make this happen. And so Zapier, you get a free piece of this, or sorry, there's a free version of it. So you basically get what they call 5 zaps, so 5 workflows, and you can do this task 1,000 times. I think actually it says 1,000 here. My last one I looked at was 100, but even still, I'm not adding 100 names to Microsoft Outlook that I have to worry about how many times it runs this. But the idea is when I go and I create this Zap, and again, I'll have more instructions, but I create a Zap and I basically I'm going to say, hey, what I want to do is I want to take a look at Microsoft 365. And every time that I add something in here, so there's a trigger here, whoops, there's the account, there's a trigger. The trigger says every time a new contact is added into Microsoft, I want you to create a new contact in Google Contacts. Like I said, I'll do a video. I'll have more of this later. I'm not going to show you step by step right now, but it's really easy. It's just those 2 steps. And so what happens now is whenever I get something in Outlook added here, once every 15 minutes, which is the default for the free plan here, once every 15 minutes, Zapier will go in, check to see if there's a new contact. If there's a new contact, it'll copy it over to Google. So let's see what happens. So here it is. I'm just going to refresh it so we can see this piece here. There's everyone there. I'm going to go into my contacts. There's my contacts. I have an email that came in from Jazz, so I'm going to take a quick look at it. If I click on Jazz's name, there's 3 dots come up here and it says add to contacts. So I'll add that name in. I can either add the contact from email, or I can just go right into contacts and add a name. But I've got the email and the name there. I'm going to add a phone number in there just because I know his phone. So I'll do a business phone number, we'll do 555-555-555-5555, and I'll put a note in there, big and fluffy. And I'm going to create that contact. What's going to happen is within 15 minutes, this script is going to run. Now, I'm not going to wait for that, so I'm just going to push it manually here just so you can see, but it will run every 15 minutes. And when I go into Google and I do a quick refresh, there's Jazz. So from now on, anytime I add someone to a contact here in Outlook, it'll automatically get added to here, which means when I go to share something, I can type in Jazz, and look, Jazz's name shows up as a person that I can finally do. So I don't have to worry about their email anymore, which is a level of frustration that I've had for years. So that's Zapier. It's really not that hard to get used to. And once you've set it up, really, this is the only Zap that I have set up and running. And it's been I've had it running on my personal account for, I don't know, probably 5 years. So it's been doing this for 5 years, adding stuff into my BECT Google Calendar or contacts automatically. Can that be done with Outlook groups? I honestly don't know because I've never looked at that. But you can take a look and get back to us and let us know. I think I remember seeing adding to contact groups as one of the choices. And we can chat about it later, take a look if we want. Questions on Zapier? Okay, let's. Last thing is I put an article on my website about remote desktop. So someone asked, what's the best way to do remote desktop? And it depends on what you or who you're working with and what you want to try and do. We've talked about remote desktop and screen sharing in the past, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but Microsoft Teams right now is my favorite. It's a great way because as long as the other person can download Microsoft Teams and then follow a link, then we're in a meeting. And then I can go into, the sharing, and then here you can see give control, take control, whatever, all that the control stuff is in there. Sometimes I find it a little bit glitchy, and sometimes I have to disconnect so that the other person can do whatever they need to do. But it still is a better way than having somebody like an older senior relative trying to tell me what they see on their screen. That's just a level of frustration that I do not want to go through ever again. So this is the kind of fun stuff that makes it easy to do that. If you're working if both of you have Google accounts, you can use Chrome Remote Desktop. And basically it gives you a web page that looks like this. The one time that someone is asking to share their computer, they'll have to download and install a little app. It takes like 2 seconds. But after that, it comes down to everyone goes to this web page. So let's say I'm helping my mom. She goes to this thing and she says, hey, I want someone to access my computer, or I want to share my screen. She clicks on share my screen, gives her a 6-digit code, I believe it, no, 12-digit code that I basically will go in and say, hey, I'm going to help somebody. And then I can punch the code in and bang, I've got access to control her computer. Can't find my screen, that won't go away. So Chrome, I use this one a lot. If you're a Mac user, you can there's built-in screen sharing. So if you have a chat going on, I'm just going to pull up my messages app here for a second. Come on. Give me a sec while I find someone to message with. Let's go here. No, it's got to be someone that's okay. Give me a second. I got to find someone I can work with. I should have prepped this beforehand. Sorry. Okay. All right. So if you've got someone that you communicate with, if you go up into like you click on this link, you can do a FaceTime call. But if you click on the eye here, usually what happens is this part here says share comes up, and then I can start a screen sharing session automatically with that person. So as long as they've got a laptop or a computer like a MacBook, this isn't mobile, but if they got a MacBook or stuff, it's easy for me to initiate a sharing screen right from my text messaging. Windows has a similar function called Quick Assets. That's Quick Assist. Let's try that. Quick Assist. Quick Assist does the same thing as we talked about in Google Chrome Remote, where, hey, I want someone to share my screen. I'm going to generate a code, send it to that person. They put it in, and bang, it's done. And this is all built into Windows machine. Finally, the last one is TeamViewer. TeamViewer has been around for years and years and years and years. So there's a commercial side of it, and then there's a free version. And so they basically say, if you're using this for personal use, it's free, rock and roll. So even though they may prompt you at some point to pay for it, just remember, if you're using it for personal work, you don't need to pay for it. The one thing that TeamViewer brings that's really nice is it also works on a mobile device. So I have TeamViewer on my mobile device. I can, anytime someone says, Trevor, can you help me? I can actually do it from my mobile device. Not only view what's going on, but I can take control of the other person's computer. And I use that for some of my computers that I have here at home. When I'm away, I can check and I can control it as if I'm right there in front of it. TeamViewer also offers the opportunity, if I remember correctly, if you install it on an Android device, that somebody else can actually take and run your Android device from their version of TeamViewer. So that's just kind of cool for the Android side of things. So when you're trying to troubleshoot again with a parent or something like that, you can actually go in and click and tap buttons, if my memory serves me correct. I've also included an article off to the side here on 16 best free remote software. Most of that is Windows based, but there are a couple other things in there that you might find that works well. Personally, I think, any of these ones here, I use Chrome Remote Desktop all the time. I use TeamViewer all the time. And of course I use, everything. So I really suggest just play with it, to find out which works best for you and the person you're working with, and then make your choice that way. Questions on that? Cool. That's it. That's my 20 minutes. Awesome. Questions on anything? Okay, I'll stop the recording then.